Hello and good morning. My name is Colin McSweeney and I'm the Director of Public and International Affairs at Cork Chamber. I'm delighted to welcome you to this morning's Sustainable Cork Programme webinar. Before we go any further, some housekeeping. Could you please all ensure that your mics are off? And also please be aware that we are recording this webinar for our own records. This is our fourth and final SCP of 2024. Throughout the year, we have explored a diverse range of topics such as gender in the workplace, infrastructure, and biodiversity, and today's SCP, how next generation supply chain leaders can impact change. I'm really looking forward to hearing from our three excellent speakers today. Nini Bierke, Vice President of Sustainable Procurement at Statkraft, Sjovasan Kobender, Supply Chain Director, Heineken Ireland, and Ingrid de Donker, Head of Research and Innovation at Future Planet. Thank you, of course, to our sponsors, Cork Chamber, Skillnet, ESB Generation Trading, and Statkraft for the continued and valued support. And of course, thank you for attending today. And please do participate in today's session by using the chat box for Q&A and joining in the conversation. With that, I'd like to hand over to my colleague and our moderator, Alicia Matthews-Cadena. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathal, and good morning, everyone. Before I introduce today's SCP, I would like to acknowledge as well that this is the fourth and final event of the year. So I would like to do a brief recap and to mention the impact that SCP has had in 2024. This year, as Cathal mentioned, we have held 4 SCP events, including this one. So we have covered a range of key issues in sustainability, from gender balance, work and workplace dynamics, business adaptation to climate change, our in-person event on biodiversity and infrastructure, and today's SCP on sustainable supply chains. This year, Cork Chamber was honored to be selected as an SDG champion. So this gave us the opportunity to assess the impact of this SCP webinar series and how SCP delivers benefits across the Sustainable Development Goals. We were delighted to learn that our SCP events directly delivered on 14 out of the total 17 goals throughout the year. We were also glad to see that SCP has had a direct impact on several economic, social, environmental, and governance targets linked to the UN SDGs. So this leads me to this morning's SCP webinar. Today, this SCP directly contributes to achieving SDG number 12. So this is responsible consumption and production. This morning, we are going to explore how businesses can lead the way by embedding sustainability into every aspect of their supply chain operations. As we navigate a world increasingly shaped by the need for environmental and social responsibility, the importance of sustainable supply chains has never been more evident. From managing carbon footprints to embracing circularity, I'm looking forward to learning more about the strategies that our speakers will discuss today. We are privileged to have an incredible lineup of speakers who are at the forefront of sustainable procurement and supply chain innovation in their industries. So first, our first speaker today is Nini Bierke. She is the Vice President of Sustainable Procurement at Statkraft. Nini is an expert in logistics, sustainable supply chains, and procurement, and she is part of a team advancing clean energy and carbon-free future. Nini, over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Alicia. I'm now sharing my screen, right?
Yeah, you just have to make it. Yeah, perfect now. Yeah, thanks.
Good, thank you. And thank you, Alicia, for inviting me to this interesting webinar. And it's so good to talk about and also to share the sustainable procurement practices and also discuss how we can navigate the complexities of the global supply chains. So I will start with just a brief recap of Statkraft. The history of Statkraft goes back to 1895, when the Norwegian state acquired its first ownership rights to a waterfall. The purpose was to provide power to operate a railway in Norway. Commitment to modern technology and railway electrification were the driving forces behind that acquisition, actually. So today, Statkraft is a global player in the renewable energy industry and is Europe's largest generator of renewable energy. We have operations in 21 countries around the globe, and I have more than 6,000 employees. Hydropower is the backbone of our business, but the group also provides wind, solar, and gas-fired power, and also storage services. In addition to developing and operating renewable energy assets, we have a significant global market operation business. And as mentioned, Statkraft is organized as a state-owned enterprise with the Norwegian state as the sole owner. And the goal of the state's ownership is highest possible return over time in a sustainable manner. This forms a clear guiding also for Statkraft's strategy, aiming to deliver the highest possible value to our owner in a sustainable manner. So that was some word about Statkraft. The climate crisis is no longer a distant threat. It is happening here and now. We face both a climate and natural crisis when rising temperatures, increased flooding, droughts, wildfires, as well as an increasing loss of biodiversity and damaged ecosystems. As a leading international renewable energy company, Statkraft aspires to drive a green and just energy transition. As we power the green transition with renewable energy, we must also pay attention to our own impact on the environment and on people. We must make sure this is a just transition. Statkraft's sustainability strategy is an integral part of the company's corporate strategy. The strategy addresses the most important impacts, risks, and opportunities related to Statkraft's activities, increasing external expectations and also regulatory development, and builds on the UN Sustainability Development Goals. So going to the strategy itself, we intend to drive a green and just energy transition through 4 pillars. But the climate change is here and affects every corner of the globe. To limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees, global greenhouse gases emission must approach net zero by 2050. So Statkraft is committed to that target and to the Paris Agreement. For the biodiversity, the world has experienced significant global biodiversity loss of the 50 years. And through the Global Biodiversity Framework, the global community joined forces to halt this development. So Statkraft must also contribute to these global efforts. Managing our impact on people and the transition, it must be fair and inclusive as possible for everyone. As mentioned, it must be the just transition. So respect for human rights is an integral part of this, from promoting decent working conditions to protecting vulnerable groups impacted by energy developments. So Statkraft is committed to respecting the human rights of our people, our supply chain workers, and the communities where we operate. Global society currently uses the resources of about 1.6 Earths annually. A circular economy aims to preserve the value of materials and products for as long as possible. This reduces the footprint of materials and enhances economic efficiency. Statkraft aims to be a circular business by 2050. So if we look at the challenges that we are facing, our world and business environment is changing rapidly as global disruptors are reshaping supply with greater frequency and increasing intensity. The urgent energy transition towards net zero is facing multiple headwinds. We have the geodependency, economic barriers, huge investment needs, as well as increasing difficulties to accommodate all stakeholders. The renewable energy sector struggles with supply chain transparency, often hiding unethical practices like labor exploitation and environmental harm. The complexity of these supply chains spanning multiple countries and tiers of suppliers complicates tracing material origins and ensuring sustainable practices. Enhancing transparency is vital for building trust and ensuring ethical sourcing of renewable energy solutions. So the sustainability landscape is evolving rapidly, pushing for stronger actions and broader scopes. Companies are increasingly expected to move from ambition to action. The surge in regulations and reporting requirements, for example, CSDDD, CSRD, forced labor ban, etc., make sustainability integration into key businesses processes mandatory and driving performance. So as discussed in the previous slide, we see that the business and the world is changing rapidly. What we knew yesterday might not be what we know today or be the direction we need to take. To be able to respond to the expected and unexpected events, we need to be structured and process-oriented, but at the same time be transformational. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about how to manage the sustainable or the supply chain to effectively respond to this. Balancing structure with transformation is essential for effective managing both predictable and unforeseen challenges. A structured, process-oriented approach ensures consistency, efficiency, risk management, providing a stable foundation. On the other hand, a transformational approach fosters adaptivity, innovation, and continuous improvement. It enables us to quickly respond to changes, develop new solutions, and stay competitive in a dynamic environment. This dual approach ensures that we are well prepared to navigate both expected and unexpected events, maintaining efficiency while remaining agile and innovative in the complexity of supply chain sustainability. Statkraft has structured the management of sustainability agenda for the supply chains around 4 key areas, guided by relevant frameworks and guidelines, including the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises. We embed responsible business conduct into policies and management systems, and also incorporate expectation and policies into the procurement process and in engagement with suppliers and its supply chains. We map the supply chains to identify inherent risk and prioritize, mitigate, and track the critical sustainability risks in the supply chains. We assess the risk both from a supply chain perspective and from the systemic perspective. We triangulate data and use control activities if needed. Sustainability is integrated into decision-making in the procurement process, and we also ensure that proper follow-up measures are part of the decision-making. Collaborate with suppliers, peers, sector, and stakeholders to achieve common goals is important, but also the communication of relevant information on activities conducted to identify and address actual or potential impacts. In the coming 2 slides, I will give 2 practical examples. The first one being how we have implemented sustainability risks into the procurement process, and the next slide, how we work in the solar PV supply chains. So to address the current landscape that we have discussed, sustainability risk management is integrated into the procurement process, the structured due diligence activities. The process incorporates both sustainability risk and systemic risk management. The process is clearly defined, risk-based approach to sustainability due diligence, enabling us to achieve better consistency in our decision-making and greater clarity and efficiency in the process. Such an approach will also position Statkraft to better meet forthcoming changes in sustainability regulations. So what we have done, we have included or integrated category and location risk of a technology into an inherent risk score for a supplier. The inherent risk can be adjusted to ensure it's always taking the full context of the procurement in account. For example, adjusted down for a supplier where broader mitigations are in place at the category level, or adjusted up if a specific risk associated with the supplier or the production site has been identified. For low-risk suppliers, a set of minimum questions must be responded to. For medium and high risk, the minimum questions increases, and also for high risk, we need to conduct in-depth due diligence activities. In the tendering phase, we need to ensure that mitigating measures are taken into account. We include clauses in the contracts that require suppliers to comply with ethical standards and allows for audits and inspection. We ensure that the supplier code of conduct is included, and also the important grievance mechanisms, the channel for workers and stakeholders to report concerns or violations anonymously and safely. So if I go to the next slide, I see the time is running. I will quickly discuss how we manage our impacts on people in the solar PV supply chains. The transition to renewable energy needs to be as fair and inclusive as possible for everyone. This is called the just transition. Respect for human rights is an integral part of this, from promoting decent working conditions, protecting vulnerable groups impacted by energy developments. And Statkraft is committed to respecting the human rights of the people. The solar PV supply chain faces significant human rights challenges, which can lead to ethical and regulatory risk. These concerns are primarily related to the extraction and processing of raw materials and labor practices in manufacturing. As we know, approximately 93% of the global manufacturing share of polysilicon, a crucial material for solar panels, is in China, where the polysilicon production primarily is concentrated in 3 regions, Xinjiang being the region with the largest production of polysilicon. In recent years, Xinjiang has gained international attention due to reports on human rights abuses against the Uyghur population. In addition to the forced labor issue, there are other concerns, such as geopolitical and trade issues. We also see a regulatory change, stricter policies and regulations like the CSDDD and the forced labor regulations, which significantly impact supply chains in several ways. To mitigate these issues, we have put in place several mitigating activities. It is to ensure we put in place enhanced due diligence, steer clear of suppliers linked to forced labor, reduce the number of suppliers to increase our controls, use frame agreements if possible, and also to ensure full addresses of production sites throughout the supply chain. Contract terms increase supply chain traceability and include a traceability protocol with a traceability audit, third-party verification, and also engage in sector, industry, and multi-stakeholder initiatives. I see that the time is running, as mentioned, so I think I will just stop there and leave the word to the next speaker.
Thank you, Nini. Thank you so much for the clear presentation and stressing the need to being agile to respond to expected and unexpected changes as we live in a world that transforms every day. So next we have Tuvesen Govender. He is the Supply Chain Director at Heineken Ireland. He brings global experience in leading resilient and sustainable supply chains in the beverage industry. And looking forward to your perspectives, Tuvesen, over to you.
Thanks so much, Alicia. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the invite. It's good to be here to discuss this topic that's been a very, very popular and very hot topic amongst the industries. And I think it's been quite a learning journey every single day. Maybe just a quick briefing and background around Heineken, what the business is about. So Heineken Ireland, we are part of the Heineken Netherlands Group. It's a family-owned company headquartered in Amsterdam. We are currently Ireland's leading beer and cider company with a strong portfolio on our products, ranging across from cider to Heineken Zero, so low alcohol, moderate alcohol beverages. 98% of the product that we currently do is brewed locally in Cork at the Ladies Well Brewery, and it's in kegs. We have a very high quality process as well, where we do almost 30,000 quality checks every single year. Our brewery is at 168 years old right now in Cork City, so it's quite an iconic spot with a mixture of really old equipment with new technology, and it's been evolving over the years. We are based in the city centre, so we have quite a big responsibility to the community and our neighbours, which we take really serious. The business employs 350 people in Ireland, with offices based in Cork and Dublin. And we also have basically nationwide with our sales teams all around the country. We have a really nice diversity in terms of the split. We have a 53% female representation in our company and 47% male. Basically in our leadership team, with our managing director also being female. So something we're quite proud of as we evolve in the liquor industry. We've been working very hard on gender pay gap splits with a 50-50 motive in there. And we service around 6,000 customers in the on-trade and about 2,000 off-trade accounts. We work very closely with our suppliers throughout Ireland, and we support numerous charities, including partnerships with assistive technology, which has been evolving and something we're quite proud of in the business. If we move on to a little bit on really the topic of the sustainability and responsibility agenda, and I think it goes really beyond just reducing our carbon footprint in the brewery, but also really how we serve the environment, what's our responsibility in terms of consumption. And in 2021, our Heineken Global team had come up with a strategy called BABW, which is Brew a Better World, with emphasis on 3 major areas. One being the environment, so really to do with energy supply, green energy supply, net zero in production, and CO2 emissions. We look at water and also how we can protect the nature. Then we have a social aspect that we look at in Brewing a Better World, which is really around how do we make the communities, how do we make it fair, very safe, how do we create diversity, and what is our impact on the communities that we are surrounded by. And lastly, we have the responsibility part of it, which is aimed at really making alcohol consumption a choice, addressing harmful use, and encouraging moderation, which is really, really important to us. Our strategy is quite simple. Sustainability is in our DNA, and it's led by the strategy I spoke around now. We have really evolving targets, and I think everyone knows that this industry and the sustainability journey has evolved at a really quick pace, where technology is changing at lightning speeds. We have multiple changes within the supply chain and the broader business that's evolving at a rapid pace, and really keeping up with it is quite key. We also have a really strong governance structure led by our MD and 5 different members, where we meet and discuss potential solutions. And we look at external verifications as well to keep us honest in that path. If we look at specifically on the supply chain focus area, and I'll touch on just a few topics given the time. So in Ireland, specifically focused, we source all our malt locally. So 100% locally sourced malt, which improves the impact on the environment, because we have less logistics happening, less trucks on the road, or shipping coming across from other countries with one of our most important ingredient in the process. So that really helps us. We also have what we call self-sustained CO2, where we basically, within our process of brewing, we trap our CO2 and reuse it. So anything coming out of the brewing process, we trap the CO2 and we reuse it for the rest of the process. So more self-sustained CO2. And then we look at really the water aspect. So over the years that I've been in the supply chain, I've seen this number develop, from beer brewing companies, going from 6 hectoliters to a hectoliter of beer produced down to 3 hectoliters. And over the last years in Ireland, we've made massive strides, reducing that by almost 12% in the last 4 years, but still a very big job to do. We have, I think, in the manufacturing process, we have a really high energy consumption. So with all the equipment and technologies that are involved in it, we have high energy consumptions, and we're constantly looking at ways in which we can use the technology and the evolving methodologies coming across on a monthly basis to enhance that process and really minimize the amount of energy we use in our process to have a better impact on the environment. We go around and we talk a lot around logistics. So for starters, 98% of our business is in kegs, which really is a lot more sustainable than more volumes going through, I would say, other package areas. And while we do have that, our business constantly is working on evolving and looking at renewable packaging materials to be 100% net zero and, let's say, efficient, environmentally friendly by 2040, which is our global strategy. we look at logistics, I think, we've transformed quite a lot in this space, from moving from gas forklifts in the warehouses over to electric forklifts. And it goes beyond just production, but we've also transformed at least 90% of our vehicles that we have on the road over to electric vehicles. So quite a progressive step in the journey. And if we look around the future, I think there's quite a bit that's in there. So we look at scope 1 and 2. Our ambition is really to be, for scope 1 and 2, to be net zero by 2030, stemming from our global umbrella all the way into the different regions and then by OPCO. And what we find is that in countries like Ireland, the journey is a bit different, given the amount of CO2 that we emit in the production process, the landscape, the positioning of the sites being, really being in a city. So the challenge we experience is that while there are many solutions, one, the cost of implementing these solutions versus the amount of CO2 that we're emitting is currently not really linking and tying up. And that becomes quite a big challenge to understand what solutions do you put in place, or can you create or design with the evolving technology to actually also be cost efficient over the time period. The second challenge that we have is that while our business strives to be net zero in production by 2030, given the location that we have, we also have to remember that we need to be friendly not only to the environment, but also to the community. So the solutions that come about, involve robust processing, sometimes requiring combustion. There's biomethane involved and different aspects, which could also be harmful to the environment and to the community. So the challenge that we see is, one, given the size, the landscape, the position of the sites, we need to find really a solution that's cost effective over the period while benefiting the environment, but at the same time resonating with the friendliness to the community. And that's sort of where we are in our solution. We've been over, I think, 21 different solutions to look at how can we really implement. And at the moment, we're really stuck in that challenge right now of finding a solution that really meets both the objectives. I think that's sort of where we're at. If I look at beyond that, we've done a lot of work with people with disabilities, in terms of sustainability and responsibility. We also look at how our industry can support people with disabilities, and we really brought out a lot of initiatives with Assistive, where people with disabilities can actually really go into pubs and work in a pub or in an environment as such with technology that supports the disabilities. And it's something that Heineken Island is very proud of and that we continue working on. And then lastly, just to touch on logistics, by 2030 to be net zero in logistics. I think that solution we've seen that, one, you can go electric, and we're currently trialing it with an electric vehicle up in the Dublin city centre to understand how the infrastructure will cater to the electric vehicle and the needs of the distance and travel times. At the same time, we are looking at alternative fuels, which is actually turning out to evolve quicker than we would have expected. So alternative fuel methods for our vehicles will also be definitely something that we start trialing and experimenting in 2025. Good, Alicia. I think that's it from me.
Yeah,
I'll hand over to the next speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Sebastian. It's great. Thank you so much for sharing also the challenges, and it's great to see how Heineken is leading the way in a progressive manner, and including both environmental, social, and responsibility strategies as part of the industry. I see some comments, questions coming in the chat, so I'd just like to keep encouraging the audience to use the chat box for the Q&A. And I would like now to move to our third and last speaker. So our final speaker is Ingrid de Donker. She is the head of research and innovation at Future Planet. With over 20 years of experience in global supply chains, Ingrid is a recognized leader in sustainable procurement and ESG innovation. Ingrid, over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'm just sharing my slides. And you're very kind, Alicia. It's actually 30 years. You're kind to my age. I was thinking back, yeah, it's around 30, nearly 30 years that I've been in various industries, various roles. And at that moment in time, procurement, and I think this might relate back to other people, sustainable procurement, sustainable supply chain wasn't coined. We tried to do the right thing and do it right, and so we were asking the right questions. And now, obviously, it's all around sustainable procurement, sustainable supply chain. But I just want to make sure that I also express not only my gratitude, but also the knowledge that a lot of supply chain leaders already have been doing this for years and years. And so we're not starting from afresh. And for me, I just wanted to start with a quick, I thought this was interesting, because what we as buyers and supply chain leaders need to do is obviously bring our supply chain into what is important to our business, understanding their risks, understanding the opportunities, mitigating the risks, the negative risks, and taking advantage of the opportunity while making resilient our full supply chain. So CDP had a recent study around what drives supplier action, and it's up to us to build that capacity within the supplier. What does good look like? What are we expecting from them? So we need to be clear in how we communicate to them and how we collaborate with them. And the report said as well that financial incentives matter. So it showed that where there's initiatives to reduce Scope 3 emissions, and you can see a lot of the initiatives at the right-hand side, and Statkraft is providing some of those solutions, it results in significant savings. But it's only 15% that actually focusing on that targeted engagement with the supply chain. And again, 52% were more likely to reduce their annual emissions. And the suppliers who received support from us, from the buying community, they were 2.6 times more likely to set science-based targets. Now, science-based target is also aligned with CSRD. I just wanted to share some of the stats to say it is important, and let's be clear, our leadership matters. How we engage with suppliers, how we bring them on the journey, how we are clear and how we're setting targets, sharing our targets and influencing what good looks like. It is our job, and it's also our to the benefit of all of us. I want to share, CSRD is here, the Corporate Sustainable Reporting Directive. We all have heard about it. We all know about it. It's a reporting requirement, okay? I just want people to know this is about reporting. This is about reporting what you currently do. Be transparent and share across 1,200 different data points where your company currently is at, how it has embedded already, or it plans to embed the E and the S and the G topics. And it's actually, it's built on so many previous voluntary and mandatory standards. We see it's aligned with the SDGs. It has TRI absolutely in its core from an impact perspective, SASB. So it's, again, we have already in previous reports, in previous reporting, an awful lot of information. So for me, it's reuse and recycle and understand the gap that we need. But it's here, and there's more coming. And that sometimes is the problem. It's that huge wave of legislation that is coming to understand where we are, what we need to do, and what is applicable to our business. I'm sure that for Statkraft, there are different focus on legislative regulatory requirement that they need to do than for Heineken. We're working in different sectors, while at the same time there are mandatory requirements to report. However, for us, and this is where I come in again, as you say, I have so many years of experience out of supply chain. I was actually frustrated. My previous company, I had my own company. We were consulting, and I was actually frustrated with my own acceleration. I could only help one company at a time. I felt like I should do more, and therefore I got together with my co-founder, who's absolutely a star in platform development, and we built Future Planet to address the challenges that we have in the complex supply chain. And I quickly have just focused on two. There are more, but especially we're now looking at ESG non-financial and financial data, and we have a problem with our data quality. We have gaps. We don't know how to measure, what to measure. There's a multi-tier complexity of our supply chain that we haven't reached out to with those specific questions. We work very well on other aspects, but not specifically on the E and the S and the G. We still use inconsistent methodology, and that sometimes is impacting the availability, the accessibility, and ultimately we need to make sure that we have full support and we can report against it. From another side, we sometimes have a lack of supplier commitment or engagement, and we actually don't know how mature they are. And some of our suppliers are really mature, but that's because they have their internal leadership. As Shubhasan said earlier on, that commitment from up high is really important to drive ESG change. We sometimes don't know where our suppliers are, what their baseline is in relation to specific topics, and we've touched on greenhouse gases, and we've touched on DEI, and we've touched on other social forced labor and stuff like that. So we don't know what the baseline of maturity is. We need to collaborate a lot more around training and education and influencing our suppliers so that we ultimately build our resilient supply chain. And so these are core challenges that I believe all sectors have, all buying teams have, and that's where we need to make sure that we can make a change. Nini said to talk a little bit about what we do and how we use actually technology as a companion to drive this ESG change. And again, I'm head of research and innovation, so for us, technology is a tool. We have infused it with the knowledge that is from the business, but also that we need from an E and an S and a G perspective. And for us, our vision is that the reporting requirements that now are mandatory is a consequence of all our actions. And we've heard fantastic actions already from what Nini is doing, what Shubhasan is doing, all those transformation plans. And I was delighted to hear both of them are using the word solutions. They're not focusing anymore on the risk. They're looking at the opportunities, the solutions, because that's the right word. We kind of get this ESG and anxiety, and because it's such a complex word, but once we look at it as a positive thing that we all can work together on, that's what we're also trying to do. So we're trying to accelerate our ESG performance, and then the reporting is a result of that change. And I'm just quickly going to go through 4 different elements that we have. So double materiality assessment, I don't know if everybody has already done it, has heard of it. What it actually is, it's what are your focus area? What are your impacts, your risks, your opportunity that you in your organization with your ecosystem, your customer and supply customers and suppliers can actually really make a change on? What are your priority topics? And so we build a double materiality process map on a platform to guide you on your journey to do this. It has 7 steps. It's fully compliant with how you need to report, what you need to report, but it guides people through so you don't have to know because the system will tell you what to do. So that's one of the things we try to simplify this ESG complexity for companies. The next one is a big problem, obviously the ESG data management. There's so much challenges around it. It's so complex. It's coming from multiple sources. Then it needs to be mapped to how we need to report. We have to convert emission conversions from all over the world. The sources change every year. And then the hardest thing is to get our supplier data from a Scope 3 perspective. Again, what we've done is we've taken the structure of how we need to report, put it onto a rule book, structured data and text, because out of the reporting requirement for us and our value chain, our suppliers and our customers, there's about 1,200, of which 300 are numeric, 900 are actually text policies and all of that. So we've built that structure on the platform, and when you say this is important to us, we click it on and off. We configure it to what you need to do. So we make it really bespoke to you. So that's a centralized ESG perspective. Ultimately, and again, this is where we started, we want to drive your change. We want to help you to improve. But help to improve, you need to know where you are before you know where you're going to go. So what we have built an assessment tool, and it's kind of a questionnaire online around a specific topic. How is your company doing in relation to DEI? How is your company doing in relation to Scope 3? And it's about the behavioral change. It's not about the data anymore now. It's about what have you in place? How you're training your people? How are you monitoring? How are you reporting? So we build those assessments. You get your score to then transform, and you can see the view transformation button. When we click that, it actually then goes straight into your transformation map. So this is an action plan based on where you are, what your maturity is in relation to one of your topics that is important to you. We build your next step action plan. You then invite the people, and this is about the collaboration piece. You invite the people that are important to deliver actions. It can be internal, external, and you can start measuring your improvements, which then are being picked up again by the data, to then ultimately come into the one report. And for us, the one report should be, well, if you have captured your data, and if you already have done if you're in progress into your transition plan and you've captured all your reporting requirement, the system should grab all of that and says, for this company, for this time period, for this topic or everything, this is where we are. This is our compliant report. So we've mapped everything to the CSRD reporting to make it simple for companies to not waste time on the reporting, so they can allocate all their resources on the doing. And that's what we're about. That's our impact. So our vision is we are driven by impact and we're guided by compliance. But the first thing is the most important. We're here to simplify for businesses how they embed their ESG into their full value chain. So with that, I'm going to stop there, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Ingrid. That was very interesting, and thank you for bringing CSRD's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive to the discussion. I know a lot of SMEs are now especially starting to look into it, as they will have to start reporting very soon. So thank you also for sharing how Future Planet is helping them and companies, ESG reporting. So we'll move on to the Q&A now. And I saw a few questions coming in. I have a question for Nini, actually. Nini, in your presentation, you mentioned towards the end about sustainability risk and how to manage that, and as well, how do you integrate it in decision making? So how far down the supply chain is required to do due diligence?
Thank you, Alicia. Since we are a Norwegian-owned company, we are subject to the Norwegian Transparency Act. So we are required to do the due diligence all the way down to the raw material. So Transparency Act corresponds or will correspond with the new requirements of the CSDDD actually. So before we have said it could be a hurdle to have the Transparency Act. Now we could say that it is a possibility and opportunity actually, because we have a lot of insights into the supply chain. But what I also can mention, going down the supply chain, assessing risks all the way down, it's complex and it's difficult. For the solar technology, it's somewhat easier if you compare it with the complex supply chain of wind, for example. So it is a thorough work, but it is important, and we need to work together on this. And together is with the sector, with our peers, and also with our suppliers. So it is a joint effort, actually.
Totally, yeah. Thank you, Nini. Thank you for that. Looking at the chat, we have a couple of questions for Sebastian. So a question from Simal Oturk from MTU. He is wondering, how are you incorporating social sustainability to your supply chain resilience? And then there's a second question later for you as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good question, and I may have touched on it a little bit when I spoke, but I think there's 5 aspects we currently look at. So local sourcing being one of the big ones, so local sourcing has a big impact on supply chains when it comes to creating social sustainability. Inclusion and diversity, sort of gender balance. If we look at the community impact, how do we create positive impacts in communities where we operate? And then again, employee well-being, creating fair and safe workplaces. It goes beyond just the technical part of it, creating the resilience. And then I think lastly, it's setting really ambitious goals. Organizations need to set very ambitious goals to create that resilience. But I think, if you focus on these 5 areas, by focusing on these 5 areas, Heineken really ensures that its supply chain is not just resilient, but also socially responsible.
Great, thank you. And then the second question for you was from Paul from Materia Environment. He's interested to know how the innovations that Heineken are working on when it comes to sustainable waste management.
Very good question. Yeah, very good question. And it's quite I wouldn't say like a hobby, but maybe a passion of mine. And every time you think of it, there's so many different things. But I can tell you sort of what we're doing, and maybe link in with you sometime after to give you a bit more detail. We'll need a lot more time to discuss what can be done, because there is a lot still to be done. So I think the starting is zero waste to landfill. Our site in Ireland is 100% zero waste to landfill since 2017. And then we also have a process where we actually repurposing all our byproducts, which goes out then for animal feed, really contributing to a sort of circular economy. There's still a lot more to do. But I think, and I can maybe just touch on something, there is an aspect where when you think about repurposing waste coming out of at least the beer production process, there are elements where with additional resourcing and investment, you can actually change some of that byproduct to create sort of biomethane gases, to take protein extract from there and move it in to food manufacturing businesses to repurpose for their production process. So they use the protein from that for food manufacturing for human consumption. So also would improve majorly on the circularity, but still some work to be done in terms of really how to get there at the most cost-efficient way, and also based on the locations, because there's like burning and combustion and so forth. But really good question, and I think we have a lot of work to do in this aspect as an industry.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, especially because of the location that Heineken has in Cork City, which is in the city center, probably different from other companies that might be outside of cities or city centers.
Maybe just to mention, Alicia, I think a lot of the businesses have come on board really with the regulations, like when you look at the deposit return scheme, the DRS scheme, businesses have committed to going about that, to really close the loop and I'd say act with pace and speed on how we treat waste. And then lastly, we source all our water from the Inniscarra Dam, which is about 14 kilometers away from the brewery. So it really also contributes to that circular economy.
Thank you. Great. So just looking at the chat, we have a question for Ingrid. So 90%, Julie says 90% of our suppliers are SMEs. How do we engage or influence them to align with our ESG data needs? And that's actually very interesting because we also, we deal with a lot of SMEs in the chamber, and we, as I said, they're now preparing themselves for reporting. So from both aspects of the supply chain, if you can give more information about that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a hot topic. Now, so below the CSRD, which is for a big organization, the EU also has developed the VSME, the voluntary SME standard. It's voluntary, but what it does do, and again, for me, is that checklist that that SMEs can say, this is what good looks like from our perspective. There's about 11 data reporting elements. So we're talking about greenhouse gases, scope 1 and 2. We're talking about water. We're talking about waste consumption. We're talking about some diversity. And then there's shows a little bit of your policies, but it's really focused where the EU is actually outlining for SMEs. This should be your rule book. So maximum there's 11 or 20 if you break it down into the numerics. Core elements that you need to collect, and then shows what you're doing in relation to your policies and actions. But it's actually the EU giving the power in the hands of the SME, saying, if it's good enough for us, it should be good enough as well for your customers, who are big organizations, who need this information for their mandatory reporting. So for me, again, it's a competitive advantage that SMEs can look through, and again, it's 50 page. It's not a big exercise. It's really called out clearly what they should be collecting or focusing on if they want to, and for me, a competitive advantage, if they want to be seen as a great ESG supplier, even if they're a small company, if they have less than 10 people, it doesn't matter. These are quite easy. The majority is quite easy data points to collect. And once you do that, it is relevant for all your customers. It's relevant. So you only have one library of data points to keep updated. And if your customers are asking more, then that's an individual discussion, but this should be good enough for you to be considered. Always be part of a tender if you're going to be invited, because if it's good enough for the EU, it should be good enough for your customers. And I think it gives the power into the ESG discussion also to the SMEs, because yes, they get at the moment 10, 20 different formats, questionnaires from their customers, and the customer is asking the same thing, but in a different way, because obviously it's impacting them in a different way, in a different sector. Once the SME can just build their own little ESG SME rule book of, these are the data points and this is what we have in place, share that even proactively with their customers, that is a competitive advantage. So as SME, use it as a competitive advantage as well. So I would tell everybody, go and see what the VSME is, go and figure it out. It's not that difficult.
Thanks, Ingrid. That's great. And that's actually a great way of finishing today by adding the view of the consumers, as we are all are consumers, but also it's kind of the end of the supply chains. That's also the purpose of having a supply chain, right? So I will start to wrap up the session today. And I think it's just clear from the insight of our speakers that the road to sustainability and supply chain, although it might bring some challenges, it also brings opportunities both for SMEs and large organizations. So I'd like to thank Nini, Tuvesen, and Ingrid for your time and expertise, for sharing your insights with us today, and your inspiring contributions. Also, a special thanks to our sponsors, Cork Chamber Skillnet, ESB Generation of Trading, and of course, Statkraft, for your continued support in SDP. And lastly, thank you to all our viewers who have attended today and all of the previous meetings this year. And we look forward to seeing you again at our 2025 SDP events you can check out corkchamber.ie for more information on our upcoming events and webinars. Thank you so much and have a lovely day.
Thank you much.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Thanks, everybody.